datang di segmen analisa. Oke, di bagian cerah ini, sebelumnya mohon maaf ya, itu selamat jumpa dengan Neo Reaction. Oke, di bagian cerah ini akan saya coba memprediksi bagaimanakah terjadinya apabila perang antara Amerika Serikat dengan Iran yang ada di Teluk Persia ya. Kira-kiranya bagaimanakah akan saya coba untuk membahasnya di sini ya. Dan jikalau perang antara Amerika dan Iran di Teluk Persia, jika faktanya itu misalkan ya USS Abraham Lincoln itu menang lawan semua armada tempur Iran baik darat, laut dan udara, ceritanya mungkin akan sangat seru sekali ya, karena perang tersebut jika USS Abraham Lincoln itu menang telak di laut ya, karena USS Abraham Lincoln itu peralatannya sungguh sangat canggih sekali dan sangat luar biasa sekali ya, peralatan yang ada di atas dek kapalnya itu ya, kapal USS Abraham Lincoln yang mana itu biayanya itu sekitar 200 triliun ya, itu biayanya untuk membuat kapal itu. Apabila kalah ya Amerika bangkrut ya. Oke, berdasarkan analisa situasi geopolitik dan militer terkini ya, jikalau itu perang terjadi terbuka di Teluk Persia, maka gugus tempur kapal induk USS Abraham Lincoln jikalau ini misalnya berhasil menang telak melawan seluruh armada tempur Iran darat, laut dan udara, skenario mungkin akan menggambarkan suatu dominasi teknologi militer yang sangat mutlak sekali yang dimiliki oleh Donald Trump ya. Karena apa? Karena Donald Trump sendiri mengklaim bahwasanya USS Abraham Lincoln dan USS Gerald R. Ford itu kapal induk yang terbesar di dunia dan termahal juga terhebat di dunia ya, itu ya klaim dari Presiden Donald Trump ya. Dan USS Abraham Lincoln juga dikawal oleh kapal-kapal perusak ya, kelas atas, kelas hebat ya, dan kapal penjelajah membawa skuadron skuadron F-35 ini yang paling ini ya, canggih sekali ya, sama juga skuadron F-35 itu pesawat jet tempur siluman itu ya, itu yang sangat canggih sekali ya, yang terbaik di dunia ya katanya, ini buatan Amerika ya. Dan juga Super Hornet juga, pesawat FA-18E ya. Jadi pesawat ini dapat menetralisir angkatan udara Iran yang dianggapnya itu lemah atau dianggapnya itu kurang power gitu ya, dan juga pesawat tua dengan cepat ya. Dan akan USS Abraham Lincoln misalkan menang itu bisa melumpuhkan radar pertahanan udara Iran ya, seperti Bawar 373 dan sistem komunikasi IRGC yaitu Korps Garda Revolusi Islam sebelum serangan utama itu dimulai ya. Dan Iran pun juga bisa mengandalkan cepatnya serangan dan swarm bots di Teluk Persia. Namun helikopter serang MH-60R Seahawk dan pesawat serang kapal induk akan bisa menghancurkan armada ini dari jarak jauh ya, sebelum mereka bisa mendekat. Karena apa? Karena di atas kapal induk raksasa super jumbo itu USS Abraham Lincoln punya Donald Trump itu dilengkapi dengan radar yang sangat canggih sekali ya. Jadi bisa mendeteksi adanya suatu serangan yang akan timbul, akan datang itu dalam jarak radius 100 km bisa dilacak gitu ya. Namun demikian lain halnya misalkan nanti Iran menyerang secara serentak ya, seperti apa yang dilakukan pada beberapa bulan yang lalu saat 12 hari perang antara Iran dengan Israel ya, ternyata Israel KO, hancur lebur negaranya ya. Namun di sini yang akan saya bahas yaitu tentang bagaimanakah keberhasilan misalkan ya, membayangkan bagaimana keberhasilan daripada USS Abraham Lincoln, kapal induk Amerika Serikat yang ada di Teluk Persia itu ya. Dan yang perlu diketahui, kapal induk itu dikawal dengan pengawalan probabilitas tinggi ya, untuk menembak jatuh rudal yang akan mendekat itu bisa ya, dalam skenario kemenangan yang telak ya. Dan di Selat Hormuz, USS Abraham Lincoln yang ditenagai nuklir bergerak sangat perlahan. IRGC Iran meluncur ratusan drone Shahed dan kapal cepat untuk serangan kerumunan. Cepat Iran mendekat, namun mereka akan disambut oleh helikopter MH-60R Seahawk yang punya Amerika yang ada di atas kapalnya itu ya, dan meluncur Hellfire Missiles yaitu rudal-rudal dengan hulu ledak yang sangat tinggi sekali, itu bisa muncul ratusan ya di atas geladak kapal induknya itu ya. Bisa disetting dengan komputer dan bisa mempunyai radar, dilengkapi dengan radar sonar canggih ya. Jadi bisa mendeteksi jarak 100 km sebelum suatu serangan atau barang atau apa yang akan mendekat itu bisa ditembak jatuh oleh kapal induk tersebut ya. Dan jikalau USS Abraham Lincoln menang telak dalam waktu kurang dari 1 jam, armada laut di Iran itu bisa lumpuh total ya. Karena apa? Kapal perusahaan Amerika Serikat bisa meluncurkan puluhan rudal Tomahawk-nya ke pusat komando darat, bunker, dan situs peluncuran rudalnya ya. Juga bisa melumpuhkan kemampuan balistik Iran ya. Dan oke, langsung aja kita lihat bagaimanakah guys skenario misalkan USS Abraham Lincoln nanti menang menghadapi serangan-serangan baik darat, laut, dan udara yang dilakukan oleh Iran. Ini hanya sebuah simulasi ya, sebuah bayangan bagaimanakah seandainya perang dunia ketiga tadi menang dan dimenangkan oleh Amerika. Oke guys, langsung aja kita lihat bagaimana video-video berikut ini.
Within 2 seconds, automated warnings transmitted to every ship and aircraft in the battle group through secure data links connecting all American forces into an integrated defensive network. Within 5 seconds, every American vessel knew exactly how many missiles had been fired, where they came from, their current positions and speeds, and most importantly, how much time remained before they would reach the carrier. Sophisticated computers aboard the American warships were already calculating optimal firing sequences, deciding which defensive weapons should engage which missiles to ensure every threat would be targeted by multiple systems if necessary. The American admiral commanding the battle group from his command ship looked at his tactical display, showing 24 hostile missiles approaching from 4 directions, and immediately gave the order that would activate every defensive weapon in the American force. All units, weapons free, engage all hostile missiles, execute. 6 American F-A-18 Super Hornet fighters that had been flying patrol above the carrier immediately turned toward the approaching missile swarm and fired their missiles at the Iranian weapons. 12 American interceptor missiles streaked toward the Iranian cruise missiles at combined speeds exceeding 3,500 miles per hour, their radar seekers quickly finding targets and guiding the weapons to impact. Within 20 seconds, 8 Iranian missiles had been destroyed at ranges beyond 40 miles from the carrier, reducing the threat from 24 incoming weapons to 16. The 3 American warships surrounding the carrier then launched their long-range defensive missiles from vertical tubes built into their decks. 16 interceptor missiles climbed to 50,000 feet altitude and accelerated to more than 2,500 miles per hour before diving down on the remaining Iranian cruise missiles, using their own radar guidance systems to track and intercept the incoming threats. Each American missile found an Iranian weapon and destroyed it with precise impact, eliminating 12 more threats at ranges between 25 and 35 miles from the Lincoln. 4 Iranian missiles survived this second wave of defensive fire and continued racing toward the carrier at wave-top height, skimming just above the ocean surface to avoid detection. One of the American warships engaged 2 of them with medium-range missiles at about 8 miles distance, destroying both with direct hits that blew them into fragments scattered across the water. The final 2 Iranian missiles penetrated closer, getting within 4 miles before the Lincoln's last-ditch defensive guns opened fire with devastating effect. The carrier mounted 3 automated gun systems specifically designed to destroy missiles that got through all other defenses. These systems locked onto the final Iranian weapons and began firing streams of 20mm rounds at a rate of 4,500 bullets per minute, creating walls of lead that the incoming missiles had to fly through. The first Iranian missile was torn apart by multiple hits at 2 miles from the ship and crashed into the ocean, sending up a large spray of water. The second missile got slightly closer before concentrated fire from both gun systems shredded it and sent the debris splashing into the water, about 1.5 miles from the carrier. The entire defensive battle had lasted 4 minutes and 18 seconds from first missile launch to destruction of the final Iranian weapon. All 24 Iranian anti-ship missiles had been intercepted and destroyed at various ranges from 45 miles down to 1.5 miles. Not a single missile had reached the Lincoln or any other American ship. The layered defensive system had worked exactly as designed, giving incoming missiles multiple opportunities to be destroyed long before they could threaten their targets. The American admiral commanding the battle group had successfully defended against the Iranian missile attack, but he knew the threat wasn't over. The 8 Iranian warships that had launched the attack were still operational about 65 miles away, and and while they had expended all their long-range missiles in the initial attack, they still posed a potential threat. More importantly, allowing the Iranian vessels to escape back to their bases would send the wrong message, suggesting that Iran could attack American forces and then retreat without consequences. The admiral made his decision quickly, knowing that the Iranian ships would be attempting to withdraw to the safety of their territorial waters. He had no intention of allowing them that opportunity, and he immediately transmitted orders to convert the successful defense into an overwhelming counterattack that would eliminate the Iranian naval threat completely. All strike aircraft, you are cleared to engage hostile surface units with anti-ship missiles. Submarine Texas, you are cleared hot to engage the Northern Surface Group with torpedoes. Destroy all Iranian vessels. The 6 American FA-18 Super Hornet fighters that had just helped defend against the missile attack immediately received new targeting assignments and split into attack groups. Each fighter carried 2 AGM-84 Harpoon anti-ship missiles under its wings, giving the strike package a total of 12 missiles available for the counterattack against the Iranian fleet. The fighters climbed to 10,000 feet altitude so their radar systems could see farther across the curved ocean surface, scanning for the Iranian warships that their navigation systems showed should be about 65 miles away. The advanced radar systems mounted in each Super Hornet's nose were among the most capable airborne radar systems in the world, able to track dozens of targets simultaneously while also providing detailed mapping of the ocean surface below. Within seconds, all 6 fighters had locked onto the 8 Iranian vessels and were feeding targeting information into their Harpoon missiles. The pilots coordinated their attack plan through secure voice and data communications, assigning specific targets to each missile and carefully timing their launches. The goal was to ensure that each Iranian combat vessel would be hit by at least 2 harpoons within a few seconds of each other, overwhelming the ship's limited defensive capabilities and ensuring their destruction. At 6:11 in the morning, all 6 fighters launched their Harpoon missiles in a precisely coordinated attack. The missiles dropped away from the aircraft and their jet engines ignited, sending them racing toward the Iranian fleet at about 550 miles per hour. The Harpoons flew at 500 feet altitude for most of their journey to avoid being detected too early by Iranian radar systems, then dropped down to just 15 feet above the waves for their final approach to make them much harder to shoot down. Each missile's radar seeker activated when it got within about 20 miles of its target, and the weapons quickly locked onto the Iranian ships and began making small course adjustments to ensure accurate hits. The Iranian combat vessels detected the incoming American missiles when they were about 12 miles away, giving the Iranian crews less than 90 seconds to react before the first impacts occurred. The Iranian ships tried to defend themselves by launching their own defensive missiles and firing their anti-aircraft guns at the approaching Harpoons, but the Iranian systems were old technology that had not been designed to stop modern sea-skimming missiles approaching at high speed and very low altitude. Several Iranian defensive missiles were fired, but most of them missed completely because their guidance systems couldn't track targets flying so close to the water surface, and the anti-aircraft guns couldn't aim low enough to hit missiles flying barely above the wave tops. The first American Harpoon struck the Iranian combat vessel Ghadir at 6:14 in the morning, hitting the ship's side just above the waterline with devastating force. The 500-pound warhead was designed to punch through the hull before exploding, and it did exactly that, tearing a massive 15-foot hole in the ship's side and flooding several compartments with seawater while killing or wounding most of the engineering crew working below decks. 20 seconds later, a second Harpoon hit the same ship near the bridge, destroying the command center and killing most of the senior officers who had been directing the ship's defense. 2 more Harpoons attacked the vessel Damavand almost simultaneously, striking within seconds of each other. The first missile hit the engine room and destroyed the ship's propulsion system while starting major fires that spread rapidly through the compartments. The second missile struck near the front of the ship and its warhead detonated inside the weapons magazine where the ship's own missiles were stored. This triggered a massive secondary explosion that was far larger than the Harpoon warhead alone could have caused, and the blast literally broke the ship's back, snapping the hull in 2. The Damavand began sinking immediately and went completely under in less than 2 minutes, taking most of her crew down with her. The other 2 Iranian large combat vessels, Shahed and Sabalan, each took multiple Harpoon hits within seconds of each other as the coordinated American attack overwhelmed their defenses. The combined damage from several 500-pound warheads exploding inside each ship caused devastating fires and flooding that Iranian damage control teams couldn't stop despite their desperate efforts. Both vessels lost all power and steering, becoming dead in the water as their crews fought losing battles against the spreading fires and rising water in the compartments below. While the fighters were destroying the large Iranian vessels with air-launched missiles, the American submarine Texas was attacking the 4 Iranian smaller corvettes that had been part of the original attack force. The submarine had been tracking these warships throughout the night using its sophisticated sonar systems, listening to their propeller noise and engine sounds, and it had perfect firing solutions ready when the order to attack came through from the battle group commander. The American submarine Texas fired 4 heavyweight torpedoes in quick succession, launching one weapon at each of the Iranian corvettes with deadly precision. These torpedoes were wire-guided during their initial run toward the targets, with the submarine's fire control operators steering them along optimal attack paths while monitoring their progress through the guidance wires. When the torpedoes got close to their targets, they cut the control wires and activated their own sonar seekers to home in on the final approach, tracking the loud propeller noise from the Iranian ships. The torpedoes were programmed to run underneath their targets and explode below the ship's keels rather than hitting the hulls directly. This technique was specifically designed to maximize damage by creating a huge gas bubble underwater that would lift the entire ship up out of the water and then collapse suddenly, breaking the vessel's spine when it crashed back down into the ocean with tremendous force. The first torpedo reached its target at 6:17 in the morning, running beneath the corvette Pecan and detonating its 650-pound warhead directly under the ship's keel with devastating effect. The underwater explosion created a massive bubble that lifted the entire 1,500-ton vessel partially out of the water, raising it several feet above the surface. When the bubble collapsed and the ship crashed back down, the keel snapped with an audible crack that could be heard across the water. Massive flooding began immediately through the broken hull, and the corvette started sinking stern first within 30 seconds as water poured into the ruptured compartments. The other 3 Iranian corvettes detected the torpedo explosion through their sonar systems and realized they were under submarine attack, but by then it was far too late to take any effective defensive action. The corvette commanders ordered emergency maneuvers, attempting to turn their ships and increase speed to evade the incoming torpedoes, but the American torpedoes were much faster than the Iranian ships, and their acoustic seekers had no trouble tracking the loud propeller noise from vessels running at maximum power trying to escape. Within the next 3 minutes, all 3 remaining corvettes were hit by torpedoes that ran beneath their keels and detonated with the same devastating effect. Each ship's keel broke from the massive underwater explosions, and massive flooding overwhelmed their pumps as seawater poured through the ruptured hulls. The corvettes began sinking one after another, their crews abandoning ship and jumping into the water as their vessels went down beneath the waves. At 6:23 in the morning, just 18 minutes after the Iranian combat vessels had launched their initial missile attack against the Lincoln, all 8 Iranian warships were either already sunk or dead in the water with catastrophic damage and sinking rapidly. The Iranian attack that was supposed to damage or destroy the American carrier had instead resulted in the complete destruction of the entire attacking force without causing any harm whatsoever to American ships or personnel. The American admiral immediately ordered search and rescue operations to begin recovering Iranian survivors from the water before they succumbed to exposure or drowned. American helicopters from the carrier and warships launched within minutes to search for soldiers in life rafts and floating debris scattered across an 80-mile area of ocean. The search would continue for the next 4 hours and ultimately recover 247 Iranian soldiers who were pulled from the water, treated for their injuries, given food and water, and held aboard American ships until they could be transferred to Iranian custody through diplomatic channels. Many of the rescued Iranian soldiers were in shock, unable to comprehend how quickly and completely their carefully planned attack had failed. Several soldiers reported during initial questioning that their commanders had told them before the mission that Iranian missiles were technologically superior to American defensive systems, and that they had a very good chance of hitting and damaging the carrier. The actual combat had proved these assurances completely and utterly wrong in less than 5 minutes of actual fighting. American casualties: 0 killed, 0 wounded, 0 ships damaged. Iranian losses: 8 major warships destroyed and sunk worth more than $2 billion. Hundreds of soldiers killed or captured. The battle was over.